Welcome back. Now we're going to look at second major part of Kingdom Plantae. Let me recall the features of Phanerogamy or Spermatophyta quickly. We've seen that the plants here they can be able to produce the flowers or seeds, whereas the flowering is absent in the Gymnosperms and Angiosperms are purely flowering plant along with production of seeds now, and also it has been covered with some food material. Let's learn about the sorry. Let's learn about gymnosperms. Gymnosperms are plants with erect stem, leaves, taproot, or caryoloid, and dominant sporophytic generation seen here. The caryoloid roots refers to the symbiotic cyanobacteria presence, and they help in fixing of nitrogen, and also it helps in the increasing the nitrogen availability to the soil. And the dioecious refers to two, monoecious refers to the one, and the male and female reproductive organs are mostly separate in individuals. Now we look at the reproduction. The asexual reproduction takes place through the bulbils, commonly through the trunk, and sexual mode of reproduction takes place through gametes of male and female. The male sperm reaches and archegonia by pollen tube formation. An endosperm is a tissue produced after fertilization. It is haploid in nature in case of gymnosperms. Keep this point in your mind. So when you learn same thing in the other class, the division it is a little bit different. And next we can see the xylem and phloem structures. We have two types of structures here, open vascular bundle and closed vascular bundle. The open vascular bundle will have cambium. So cambium is also now the tissue that separates phloem and xylem, whereas if we say it's closed, that means there is no presence of cambium. So these are two major types of the vascular bundles. Vascular bundles refers to system of vascular tissues appearance or geometry. Next, the classification of gymnosperms. The first one is called as Psychodopsina. The primitive group has small plants and monoxylic wood. Monoxylic wood refers to the wood that has large amount of parenchyma. I hope you can recall the parenchyma structure from the phase 1 lessons. And the parenchyma cells filled with starch canes, and it's not much commercial because they are not much durable. Example is cycas and coniferopsida, and here you can see larger dominant plants, epiphynocoxylic woods. The group includes largest trees in the world, and Gnetopsida includes advanced gymnosperms. Secondary xylem development takes place in these species. I want to mention about phyconoxylic wood, and when you say this, you will have a large amount of xylem tracheids or wood in small amounts of cortex and pith, and with little parenchyma. So this makes the phyconoxylic wood as one of the commercially important ones, and even I went through a lot of literature where the people are wantedly growing these species to obtain large amount of woods. And we have the oval structures here, what we call as orthotropous and anatropous. The orthotropous oval you can see where the pore the pore to ovule is upside, and here you can see it is inverted. So that's what we call orthotropous and anatropous. So this is also one of the unifying feature of the classes of gymnosperms. And finally the examples, and here you can see the examples. So Dragon gigantum, one of the largest trees ever seen. You can see it can even fit a car. And here you can see a cycas, and Pinus longiva mostly found on the mountains, and I can say the gymnosperms dominantly seen in the mountain regions. And you can see the seeds been producing nakely. Now let me play an animation so that you can understand the life cycle of gymnosperm. I think it's conifer. Let's go.
In conifers, the same diploid sporophyte plant has both male pollen-bearing cones called microstrobili and female seed-bearing cones called megastrobili. A female cone is a modified stem bearing a tight cluster of scales, which are reduced branches specialized for reproduction. A male cone is a cluster of scales that are modified leaves inserted on an axis. Female gametophytes are produced in the megastrobili, whereas male gametophytes come from microstrobili. Megastrobili are much larger than microstrobili. The megasporangium, in which the female gametophyte will form, is enclosed in a protective layer of sporophytic tissue, the integument, that will eventually develop into the seed coat. The integument, the megasporangium inside it, and the tissue attaching it to the maternal sporophyte constitute the ovule. The megasporocyte within the megasporangium undergoes meiosis to produce 4 haploid megaspores, only one of which is functional. The non-functional megaspores degenerate, while the functional megaspore divides mitotically, and the resulting cells divide again to produce a multicellular female gametophyte. Male gametophytes develop in a similar manner. The scales of the microstrobilus contain microspore mother cells. Meiosis gives rise to haploid microspores, which in turn mature into pollen grains, the male gametophytes. The production of male gametophytes in the form of pollen grains frees the plant completely from its dependence on liquid water for fertilization. Instead of water, wind assists conifer pollen grains in their travel from the microstrobilus to the female gametophyte inside the megastrobilus. The tiny pollen grain enters through a small opening in the integument at the tip of the ovule, the micropyle. The pollen grain germinates, forming a pollen tube. When the pollen tube reaches the female gametophyte, it releases 2 sperm, one of which degenerates after the other unites with an egg. Following fertilization, the sporophyte embryo begins to develop within the ovule, while the integument, not shown, matures into the seed coat that protects the embryo. The conifer seed contains tissues from 3 generations: the diploid embryo, the haploid gametophytic tissue, which supplies nutrients for the developing embryo, and the seed coat, which develops from tissues of the sporophyte parent, the integument. The seed eventually falls to the ground and, under suitable environmental conditions, germinates to form a new pine tree.
Good. Let's learn about the economical importance. The first is we have 5 important economical importances here. First is as food. The seeds of pinus are eatable after even roasting, and timber. They are mostly used in making of plywood, packing cases, etc. And Norway spruce, the one which is used for making the paper, as the wood is so soft as well. Next is resins. You can see here the picture, the commercial picture. You can see a lot of products can be obtained through the resins, and the turpentine oil, one of the important product that recently banned, as it is being responsible for cutting down of a large number of trees. I think it's commercially banned right now, where normally it's used as varnishes in the paints. And next is ephedrine. The ephedrine is one of the medications for treating the respiratory ailment or the sickness. You can see the commercial product here, and I think this is the actual picture, and this is the product what it's been transformed into. Now let's learn about the interesting things. You can never imagine the any of the place, any gardens without the flowering plants. Now we're going to learn about them. So the angiosperms are the flowering plants that that are enclosed seeds, and they have They are classified into two major groups, whereas monocotyledons and dicotyledons. And here you can see the differences in them. When you observe them under the microscope, the vegetative parts under the microscope, internally they showed a lot of differences. So based on that, it's based on that we have classified that into two types: the conjoined, collateral, and open. So I wanted to just combine the information here. So we want to understand a lot of anatomy, which is not been taught at this level, but still I wanted to illustrate you a bit. You can see these are three major components of the vascular bundle, and when you say that it is collateral open, xylem, phloem, in between you can see the procambium. Can you connect the terms here? So when you say collateral closed, you can see the phloem and xylem are present and procambium is absent. It's easy thing, you have to join the terms accordingly so that you will understand. When you say bicollateral, the xylem in the middle, and you can see the phloem is present on either sides of it. So that's how we actually name based on the internal structures. And now we look at the reproduction. So one of the I can say one of the evolutionary change, as you see in the animals, humans are much dominated in intelligence. I believe that the angiosperms are more developed in terms of reproducing them and adapting them adapting themselves at extreme conditions that might lead for their distribution all over the planet, without any absence. But due to excessive human activity, though their most of their important species are in extinction, near extinction. And now we look at reproduction. So reproduction in plants, male and female parts will be present, and both of them are haploid gametes. And I wanted to recall the cell division first, particularly meiosis, and male gametes are producing tissues are called as microsporophyll, and the female ones are called as megasporophylls. And fertilization takes place in these plants that results in the endosperm, which might be triploid or even sometimes the polyploid. So triploid refers to the 3N, polyploid refers to multiple number of chromosomes that we consume every time as an important part of food. I think if there is no that thing, I bet no one cultivate the fruits. Now we look at the animation. Particularly, it is double fertilization. I'm skipping the general reproduction, as we already seen in the case of pteridophytes. It's almost we already seen in the gymnosperms. It's almost similar one. So I'm only showing the double fertilization angiosperms. So observe it.
Flowering plants undergo an unusual reproductive process in which there are two fertilization events rather than just one. This double fertilization takes place between cells produced in the male reproductive organs, the anthers, and the female reproductive organ, the ovule. The ovule contains a reproductive cell called the megaspore mother cell, or megasporocyte. This cell is diploid and undergoes meiosis to produce 4 haploid megaspores. In most species, 3 degenerate, leaving 1 surviving megaspore. The 1 surviving megaspore then undergoes 3 rounds of mitosis to produce 8 haploid nuclei. Cytoplasmic divisions do not immediately follow the nuclear divisions, so the 8 nuclei initially share the same cytoplasm. This multinucleate structure is called the embryo sac. Within the embryo sac, cell walls form between most of the nuclei. 3 cells called antipodal cells form opposite the micropyle opening of the ovule. 3 also form near the micropyle. 2 are called synergids, and the other is the egg. Finally, 2 nuclei called polar nuclei remain together in one large central cell. The egg cell and the single cell with 2 polar nuclei will eventually take part in a double fertilization event. Before this can happen, the male gametes, the sperm, must travel to these cells within the female's reproductive organs. To reach the embryo sac, a pollen grain that has landed on the stigma begins to germinate, sending a long pollen tube through the style and ovary. A haploid cell, called a generative cell, travels down the pollen tube. The generative cell travels behind the tube nucleus, which is the nucleus of the large cell that makes up the bulk of the pollen tube and grain. The generative cell divides by mitosis to produce two haploid sperm cells. The pollen tube reaches the micropyle of the ovule and digests its way into one of the synergids, releasing the sperm cells. The synergid degenerates as one of the two sperm cells fertilizes the egg cell, producing a diploid zygote. The second sperm cell fuses with both of the polar nuclei, fertilizing them to produce an unusual triploid cell. As the zygote develops into an embryo, the triploid cell develops into the endosperm, which serves as the embryo's food supply.
That's it about double fertilization. Now we look at the features or the classification of angiosperms. We have classified the angiosperms into two major types. One is monocot and the one is dicots or eudicots. The monocots will have one cot within its seed, and the root structure under the microscope will appear like this. The xylem and phloem can be found in the rings-like structure, and the stem, you can see the scattered vascular bundles, and the parallel venation is seen in the monocots, and flower will be multiples of 3, and multiples of 3 into 3. The That's how the flower appears. And the eudicots or dicots, you can see two cotyledons in the seed, as you see in peanuts, and also the root phloem between arms of xylem. And next is the vascular bundles are distinct in a ring-like structure. And next is the leaves have net pattern or reticulate venation, and flower parts are 4 or 5 on their multiples. So this is about the angiosperms and the various classes in them. And now we look at the economical importance. So economical importance, as the most of the angiospermic plants yields drugs, wood, fiber, oils, latex, spices, masticatories, beverages, gums, tannins, dyes, wood, fibers, oils, latex, species. There are a lot more benefits. So it's an unending list. Now we'll look about the viruses. Viruses are non-cellular organism that does not follow cell theory, ranges 200 micrometer to nanometers. They have nuclear material, either DNA or RNA. Reproduce by infecting bacteria by a process called transduction. Viroids are smallest forms of viruses, and viruses are responsible for most of the diseases in humans and plants. You can see certain names, and next let's learn about the lichens. I already told you in the beginning, so lichens are the friends, where it is a combination of both algae and fungi. The algal partner is called as photobiont, and fungal partner is called as mycobiont. Let me show you a simple classification about the lichens. The lichens are classified into three major types based on the thallus structures. First one is the crustose lichen. So this lichen thalli are flat and closely associated with the substratum, or even it is called as a rocky substratum. And next is foliose lichen. So these lichens are flat leaf-like structure and lobed, and these are attached to the substratum with the help of rhizoid or root-like structures. And fruticose lichen. The fruticose lichens are well-developed shrub-like and cylindrical, and mostly these are branched. And the lichens have a lot of economical importance. Before going into that, I want you to observe the images here. The apotheca thing, these are some openings, and here you can see the various forms of it. The fruticose lichen are much branching, and here you can see it's almost very similar to the the rock surface. If you're able to watch the episode by Bear Grylls in Man vs. Wild, once he uses similar kind of lichen, I think to carry fire from one place to another place. And now the economical importance. So I found it has very much varied importances. So I wanted to just know about them. First is these are helpful in making certain organic acids like carbonic oxalic acids that you use in laboratories, and also they are helpful in making weathering of rocks and what we call as pedogenesis. And because of that, they got nicknamed as farmer of nature. And as food and fodder, so some of the species, particularly rock flower, uh, is used as food in South India. I'm not aware. I even told in the class. If you have any of your grandparents, you can ask about this one. If they're able to tell you what is a general name or common name. Even my search is failed when I wanted to know about that. And even some of them are used as spices. And the lichens are also the sources of certain dyes, particularly litmus. So this litmus is a part of chemistry experiment when you want to distinguish any substance or liquid substance, whether the acid or base. You can use this litmus. It's kind of sheet. When you insert inside the liquid, it shows the distinctive color. Based on the distinctive color, you can tell that whether it's acid or base. And next is lichen is important source of medicine. So certain medicinal properties are also found in some species called Usnea and Cladonia. I think that's it. Let me give you a conclusion for this. The beauty of plants never ends, and they will always stand to answer major problems. How many of you can really become passionate to reveal and help society to lead happy life?